Hi guys, it's Dom here from eSports News UK. Today I'm joined by a very special guest. Needs no introduction. It's respected eSports journalist and host Richard Lewis. Thanks for coming on, Richard.
Thanks for a very generous introduction. I'm sure there's a lot of people that do need an introduction to who I am, but it's nice that you would say otherwise. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. So for those who don't know, Richard put out a video yesterday about the UK esports scene, sort of focusing on CSGO in particular, and that was titled "Rich and Sam on the Horror of UK Esports." And in which you Richard said that the UK esports scene should be nuked from space,
Yes.
which was quite a quote. So and you highlighted some of the recent drama in the UK CSGO scene, where a few players have been banned and one admitted to taking drugs at a recent Epic LAN event. So if you guys haven't seen the video, please check it out. I'll put it in the description to this video. And so to start off with then, Richard, I was originally going to sort of create a reaction vlog to your video, but as you've kindly agreed to come on and talk, I thought I'd just sort of start by offering my
absolutely.
reaction to you.
How about it, Dom? And just wanted to say the reason why I want to be here and want to have that dialogue with you is, first of all, it obviously seems like a very hyperbolic statement when I say nuke it from space. I guess for some sensitive and delicate types, I should clarify, I don't mean literally. I do mean figuratively. I'm not going to go North Korea on it. What I mean is that we absolutely need to destroy everything that's in place and then rebuild, because the infrastructure is fundamentally broken, and that is and you do not fix things by building on top of something that is rickety. You wouldn't do it with a house. You wouldn't take a car that had a shonky engine and put a wonderful chassis on it. It would be a waste of time. And the only way that I think we're going to get to a good place is to cut away all the dead wood and see what we're actually left with that works, which in my experience isn't a whole lot.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, mate. I mean, to start off with then, you mentioned well-meaning idiots and malicious scumbags, which
Yes.
I don't deny there are certain individuals that in the scene, that maybe aren't great, aren't that positive, but I do want to point out there are some really dedicated and positive people in the scene. So obviously, if you look at people like Odie from Team Dignitas, I know it's not UK esports that much anymore, but he started out here very much grassroots and grew their organisation to what it is today. Arguably, it's going to be difficult for newcomers to do that. There are a lot of orgs starting up in the UK. But there's a lot of people out there. I mean, Adam Jessup, to name one name, from Team Endpoint, he was the original founder of Team Infused, and he set up a new org focusing on sort of Overwatch and CSGO. And I interviewed him a few weeks ago, and his head screwed on. Okay, there's not a lot of money in UK sports, and we'll go into that later. But my point is, some of the pros as well. We've got some good fighting game pros here, Problem X, and there are a lot of people, casters as well. You've got people like Vedius and Pansy, who you interviewed the other day as well. So, would you agree there are some genuine and talented people in UK esports?
Absolutely. Odie, I think, transcends UK esports. He's he's ran a brand in the form of Team Dignitas to incredibly successful heights. He's got teams all around the globe, all around the world. He's got champions in multiple games. This is somebody that's been able to leverage that success, leverage that position to be the most desirable UK organization to invest in. It's a very similar situation to what we had in North America with Evil Geniuses, where any sponsor would say, well, if I had to sponsor one organization in a region, and we'll talk about the finances a little bit later, why would I go with anyone but Team Dignitas, right? And, he's had teams in the LCS, and we all know how that ended. Unfortunately, he's sold teams for very profitable amounts of money. He's developed talent. He's in the past focused on UK talent, but he'll certainly tell you now that's not something. I mean, perhaps privately, I don't know how it would affect his bottom line if he were to publicly say this, but he, out of anybody, could tell you the frustrations of developing UK talent, which again, that's a side issue. We'll definitely focus on the business for this point now. I know Adam quite well. as you said, one of the original guys from Infused. I was a manager in Infused. I was a team manager. I handled their CS division. I used to work with Nick Carpenter over there as well. And this is why I know what I'm talking about, because I've actually managed multiple gaming organizations in the UK, including founding one my own called Excite UK, which I ran from the ground up, and we achieved modest success before running into similar financial problems. The key there was my financial problems at no point impinged or impacted on the players, which is what you have to do. You've got to be willing to shoulder that financial burden. It's a business. A lot of managers don't do that. So, and certainly our pedigree in terms of broadcasting is unprecedented in the esports space. However, the unfortunate reality about being a broadcaster, and again, I say that as someone that has achieved success in that field, is you don't really impact on you are not an influencer per se. You certainly don't get to handle the business beyond the business of getting work. I mean, that's the key thing you are interested in. You add value to other people's events, but you rarely get to dictate how those events are run. You certainly don't touch upon organizational aspects of it. You know, like for example, in US sports, you might see a big sporting organization will have their own commentators that do all the local commentary for them, or they do all their video content. That's a broadcasting model in the US that's quite well known in multiple sports. You don't get to do that in esports. In fact, you are meant to be as impartial and non-biased as possible, because obviously that can affect your chances of getting work if there's a perception that you root for one team over the other, and it informs your commentary in any way. So we definitely created some fantastic broadcasters, but broadcasters unfortunately don't go on to really make a huge impact in terms of the business of esports. What we do is we bring value to the fans, we bring value to other people's events, tournaments, we bring value to those iconic moments in the game, but the business side of things, realistically, we're the icing on a cake. So while the UK certainly has made a big impact on esports historically, if we look at its current state right now, it's completely broken. It's filled with bumbling incompetence. It's filled with people that continually overpromise and underdeliver, and they're their own worst enemy when they do this, because what they've actually managed to do is drive away investors and sponsors from a region that had one of the largest marketing budgets, largest marketing spends in esports in Europe. And they've done that consistently by taking money, promising things they can't deliver, and then not delivering it, and then that person gets cold feet and never comes back to esports. If you go back to 2006, 2007, we had a thriving esports industry. We had big companies, mainstream companies coming in, people wanted to invest, and okay, we had some external factors like the global financial collapse of 2009. That certainly impacted on everything, because the first thing that happens in a global recession, all your marketing budgets shrink. That's the first thing that gets cut away. And no one had developed any revenue streams because esports was still young back then. But we still had people willing to invest and willing to give money. It would blow your mind to think we are in a worse place now in terms of infrastructure, investment, and having the competent people to spend that money than we were back then. And that's having survived a global recession. So that is why I say we've got to nuke it from space, and that is why I cannot take the UK scene seriously in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, I'll talk about some specifics later. Yeah. I do have a tendency to ramble.
No, that's fine. Right. Same here, mate. It could be quite a long chat, this one. But yeah, my other point was around the players themselves. So what I've often been told by people in the scene is that we've got talent here. It's just sort of developing that, giving those guys a platform, and trying to make them stay professional. So over the last sort of half a year or so, we've had quite a few British League of Legends pros make it to the LCS. We've had the other week Misfits, who were Renegades Banditos, and they won the ESL UK Premiership a few months ago. And so when Riot introduced the Challenger Series qualifying spot for the winner of the UK Premiership, which I applaud them for, it attracted other teams. Banditos qualified for the Premiership. They've won it. They've gone to the Challenger Series. They've won the Challenger Series, and they've qualified for the LCS now. So there is Riot talks about this path to pro, and I sort of agree with that. But we've had the Misfits top laner Alfari. He's British. We've got Maxlaw at Giants Gaming now. We've obviously got KaSing in there, who's been there for a while. And we recently had Toaster as well, a sub in for Origin. So we do have those UK players here. But I agree with you in a way. Sometimes some of the players aren't that professional, and maybe they can learn from those guys. They've got something to aim for. Because I hear a lot of the time, "Oh, rip UK scene, UK esports is a joke." But hang on a minute, there are British players in the LCS right now, so we must be doing something right, surely.
Well, no, because if we were doing something right, you would see a kind of systematic a road to success. You would see a consistent production line of talent. Now, if you think about the population of the UK, you think about the number of people that engage in esports and play computer games, the minimal amount of top-tier talent we've produced is actually shameful. There's more Danish players. They have a population of, what is it, like between 5 and 6 million or something? That's a fraction of the UK. And yet they've produced not only more players, they've produced a consistent level of better players. And if you look at organizations that they had in Denmark, like Copenhagen Wolves, which were a League of Legends, and indeed not just in League of Legends, this is a team that had a scouting process that didn't just look at local talent. It went out all around the world. It brought in some of the best players, and it was a production line for talent. Almost every player that they brought in that achieved any degree of success and then ended up leaving Copenhagen Wolves was basically sold for a profit due to contract buyouts. And if you look at some of the names that they've produced, it is like a who's who of esports. This is like going to like Firebat in Hearthstone, obviously Bjergsen, who's now at TSM. There's just a plethora of talent, and they've done that on a shoestring budget. They've done that in a country that has a much smaller population. They've done that in a place where the marketing spend is tiny. And I know this because having attended multiple Danish events, the one thing that the organizers always talk about is how hard it is to get marketing budget in a region with between 5 and 6 million people. Because it's not worth the spend. It's tiny. It's like, yeah, we'll market to it. It doesn't matter if you've got a higher percentage. And they certainly do. They've got a great percentage of people that engage with esports. There's a group in Denmark called Dansk Metal, which is basically I probably won't do the explanation of this justice. You'll have to talk to a Danish person to really get it. But basically, it's like a technology-focused group that engages with government and local government to get funding and develop infrastructure for esports specifically. And this can extend to things like if you run an esports organization, you can apply for a grant to develop your own like team house, for example, on the basis that it's the same as developing a skate park. It provides something for the local youth, and it's not just a business venture. There's some net gain on a societal level by doing it that way, and they've achieved really good things with very limited resources. Now again, let's contrast that to the UK. What we've got is a few people that have been good enough to achieve being at the lower end of the highest level, and it's not systemic, it's not habitual, it's not routine. And for every KaSing, there's an Impaler. And that's no disrespect to Impaler, but we go back to when he was in Super Hot Crew or whatever fucking terrible name, pardon my French, that they had at the time. You can bleep that if you need to. He was considered kind of a bit of a sleeper hit, like an underrated jungler. He's just lost in the wilderness right now, and that's another thing that happens. Does our talent sustain itself? And again, the answer is no. We might get one or two people burst onto their respective scenes, but we haven't achieved anything close to global dominance of an esport. Obviously, I would say console. We've had some Call of Duty players that you could probably make that argument about. And if we go back to Counter-Strike Source, we did have Birmingham Salvo around about the CGS era, again, pre-global recession. But ultimately, the days of us producing consistent esports stars are long behind us, and there just isn't an infrastructure or an environment to ever allow for that to be the case.
Just on that, just another point I picked up on that. You were talking about, you know, the lack of top-tier British guys coming through. Do you think it's a British problem? Or because, I mean, you were saying, you know, other countries like Denmark with, or whatever countries that have a lower population than the UK, producing more pros, you know, and at a higher level. England got knocked out by Iceland in the Euros this year. I know it's not eSports, but, you know, and everyone attacked them. Do we have a mentality problem in the UK across all sports? Or,
you know, it's hard to really answer that. I think we can definitely all agree that the soccer team massively underachieved. That result was embarrassing, and football team. I've been in the States for quite a while now, but you know, I think we can all agree that they massively underachieved. And look, let's be honest. Let's look at the things that hamper the English football team. This ridiculous, nonsensical notion that you have to have an English coach. When in fact, if we look at you know, the Capello era, he still remains percentage-wise the statistically most successful England manager that we've had in terms of win rate. And meanwhile, you appoint somebody like Hodgson, you know, Capello, glittering trophy cabinet, somebody that has achieved wherever he's gone at a club level, and may not be charismatic, may not be the most interesting, may not have played the most dynamic or interesting style of football, but it was winning football. Then we appoint somebody like Hodgson. Let's look at his trophy cabinet. This is somebody who, when he went to Inter Milan, basically ran the Inter Milan team into mediocrity. Signed players, if I remember rightly, like Robbie Keane. Let that sink in for Inter Milan back when he had, you know, quite a reputation as somebody that could get into the Premier League. But the idea of him playing elite Serie A football at the time was laughable. This is somebody who's, again, like you look at the clubs that he's managed. You know, we're talking about Swiss teams and things like this. It's absolute gibberish. There was nothing in Roy Hodgson's locker that should have ever made him manager of England, other than the fact he had friends in the media that were willing to go and bat for him, and that's what they did. He is, for me, an abject failure across the board at every team that he is managed at. And to be honest, it just shows how short-sighted we all are. You know, we come out of a tournament having underperformed on a fundamental football level because we've got the talent. And what's the FA's response? We need somebody to pick these players up and motivate them, as if that should ever be a factor when you're playing for your country. And they bring in Sam Allardyce, a one-dimensional, loudmouthed, overweight half-wit who, again, has serially underachieved in his career, had the audacity in a public TV interview to suggest that if he had gone to Real Madrid, he would win the championship every season without fail. Where managers whose boots... Yeah, he absolutely did. 2011, I believe. You can Google that quote while I still go on this rant. As a Newcastle fan, I know all too well the horrors of Sam Allardyce. And, you know, this person then tried... I think he later tried to retract that and said it was tongue-in-cheek, when it absolutely wasn't. And this is somebody who has no tactical nous, no acumen whatsoever. He can just motivate a team of very ordinary players to play very ordinary kick-and-chase football. And he has now risen to the ranks of one of the most illustrious jobs in the world, you know, based on a relatively successful period with Bolton Wanderers, where they punched above their weight by playing some of the most disgusting and aggressive and thuggish football until Stoke came along with Pulis. So Allardyce is a joke. And our idea that we need to appoint English is a joke. It's outdated. It's antiquated. We need to appoint the best person for the job. And very rarely the best person for the job is an English coach with experience. You look at the Premier League. All the most successful coaches of recent years certainly haven't been English. Ferguson, Wenger, Mourinho. There's a trend here. So again, structure-wise, maybe we need to look at our coaching badges, who we're giving coaching badges to, how we encourage people to take their UEFA coaching badges, something I looked at one point in my career. So to move away from that and bring it back to esports.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah.
Because I'll talk about football.
Can I just say, before we go back to esports, thank you for the last game of the season last year for smashing Spurs. Because as a Gooner, that was quite funny for me. So
you actually managed to leapfrog him again. But I mean, you know, if you're a Gooner, then you know all too well the dangers of settling for just being good enough, not really aspiring to win trophies. Yeah, exactly. To spend money. And to go out there and actually pursue trophies. And it's a shame because I like the Arsenal method. I liked it for a very long time. I like how they used to uncover fantastic talents like Flamini, Vieira, Petit, all of these incredible players that weren't really on anyone's radar due to their scouting system. And now you look at it and it's just like, okay, this scouting system is throwing up some absolute dreck. You must have money in the bank and you're not spending it to get better. So look, finishing top 4 every season is amazing. As a Newcastle fan, I remember being upset at finishing second 2 seasons running. My God, what I would do to get back to those days. But the point is, if you're not going to pursue trophies when you're a club like Arsenal, I think that's actually a bit of a dangerous mindset. And I wrote a editorial over at my time, way back at Sabotage Times, and I think it was right about the time that you brought Henry back to the club and he scored that goal against Leeds in the cup. And I said, if you don't move Wenger upstairs, you are going to go backwards. I feel a little bit vindicated by that. You've had some incredible strong starts to the season where you've been front runners and you've dropped right off. So Arsenal, in a way, although finishing top 4 is a huge accolade.
FA Cups.
Yeah, it's just get a league. It's all about the league. The magic of the cup died ages ago. Let's be real. So esports. Esports. Right. So when we talk about mindset problems, how do we create a mindset problem in the UK scene? Well, let me tell you exactly how this happened. We went from that period I told you about where we had money, we had investment, players could get salaries, and I mean, they weren't big, but they were big enough to justify not going out, not getting a part-time job, and staying at home and practicing the requisite amount of time that you need to be a top-level esports professional. And people would get salaried for this. Now, there was a period of time, after 2009 to 2010, where all of a sudden UK organizations, all the marketing budget had been cut back, and there was no money coming in. And organizations were saying to players, you have got to put in the effort to get the salary. And the players were saying, we aren't going to put the effort in until we get a salary. And there was this like wishy-washy concession where orgs would pick these players up who would openly said, we're not going to try unless you pay us. The org was saying, well, we're not going to pay you until you try and start winning. And they entered into this just ridiculous agreement where it's like a shit version of Faust, where basically you're effectively accepting failure. It's a pre-agreed contract that I will give you all the failure you need, and yes, and I will give you your reward. Ha 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 ha. And look, nobody wins, nobody won, and for years it went on like this. And this is the situation we're at now, where all of that older talent that could pass on its experience, probably still compete, has left the scene. Right, and some of it young. I mean, there was a lot of that we had a couple of StarCraft players that could have done something. There was multiple examples across multiple titles of players coming in, basically being told there's no food in the cupboard, and then being like, well, fuck it, I've got to eat. So they left, and organizations were happy to do that because they weren't getting a lot of money. And they were thinking short term. How do I keep the lights on? How do I keep this ticking over? So they were just bringing in anyone they could short-term fixes to treat players like walking billboards, where the logos of the few investors and sponsors we can attract go to an iSeries, walk around, smile at the cameras. I don't care where you finish, just be there. And then maybe the sponsor will re-up and give us more money. And that business model led to this lethargy. Players realized they could get to any LAN event for free as long as they were willing to be walking billboards and nothing more. But when you accept that, why would you try? Why would you try? I'm not getting a salary. Why am I going to practice 10 hours a day? Why would I do that? Somebody had to pony up and get some money and make a loss. And again, this is what Team Dignitas did. Team Dignitas came out of that global recession and expanded. They said we're going to shoulder the burden. And trust me, it got hairy. Odie almost sold that organization. He'll pretend he didn't. He did. He almost sold it for a pittance of what it's worth now. And he did that because he believed in it, and he salaried players at a time when no one else would, in games that no one else would.
Which would have got the best talent, right? And
it got the best talent. Yeah. And they were incentivized to go out and practice and go out and win. And that's why Dignitas succeeded where everyone else fell back. Because nobody understood that you can't just do these short measures if you want to build something. And that's how we get to where we are now in 2016, where all the pros are gone. All the real pros are gone. You're left with a bunch of bumbling amateurs that honestly think they're as good as the generation that went before. You're not. You've got a long way to go before you ever will be. And there's nobody that can teach them the discipline, the talent, or even give them the money to make them start going down that path. And that's why you end up with playing situations like what we've talked about here. So is it a fundamentally English problem? Probably not. Although, we do look like a nation of losers right now. You got Brexit, you got the football, you got everything. There is a very hangdog perception around the English, and rightly so. I think we have a collective we just don't give a shit anymore. We're a don't give a shit country. And maybe that does translate on some zeitgeist level, but I can't comment on that. What I can say is that in esports, for the longest period of time, we took so many half measures that we basically drove all the talent, the real talent, out, and all the businesses that maybe could have done something, should have done something, shouldn't have done it the way they did it, they're all dead now. They're all gone. And we're left with a bunch of people like, oh, hey, I'll buy that brand name that maybe carries some weight if you've been around for 5 years. I'll buy that for £100. And they go, yeah, whatever, I'm done with it anyway, mate. They do the sale, and then these incompetents carry on the organization, and the only thing they know is that period of 2-3 years of half measures and free LAN events and be a billboard. Nobody's promoting excellence anymore in the UK because it's not profitable in the short term.
I've literally seen that happen recently as well with when Vince, ex-manager of Choke Gaming, broke away from Choke, picked up Team Senses. But he picked up the Twitter handle, the Twitter page of a previous org, just rebranded it to Team Senses. No one batted an eyelid, and he's got, I don't know what it is, 5,000 followers. That I guess are none the wiser, and that's carrying on. There's not sustainability on anything. But I guess one last point before we go into how to fix all this. This is a bit of a tough question. It comes from our video guy for Esports News UK, Rob Allen, who's been producing some really good videos around League of Legends and post-game discussions, and he's also a coach for M&M, who are one of the sort of more prominent, promising sort of UK league teams at that local level. Anyway, and he says in reaction, so firstly, I obviously can't defend cheating. I don't want to defend cheating. I think it's obviously wrong, and the punishments need to be there. And of course drug taking as well. How can you defend that? I can't. But he asks, do you even follow UK esports to provide a valid opinion on it, or did you just look into a few CSGO incidents? Now that's a bit insulting, bearing in mind you've just told us you've been in UK esports
that's all right. But, and again, you can't be angry at people for being ignorant, so I'm certainly not angry at him for being ignorant. I've been attending UK events for longer than he probably has even been able to spell esports. So I absolutely do know about the UK scene in a very in-depth level. A lot of my regular contacts and people I talk with are UK-based people. I have a very good relationship with Odie. I got a very good relationship with ESL UK. I got very good relationships with people who run events like Epiclan, and I'm in constant, infrequent communication with all of these people. Now, the reason I highlight these incidents in my video is because they're not as rare as they should be. They simply aren't. And anybody who says that they are is a liar. If it happens with a lot of lower profile players, just on a consistent basis. I can't tell you an iSeries I haven't been to where a player from an organization who is supposedly a pro, but I think it's fair to call them semi-pro, or indeed just out and out amateur.
That's another debate I've been called out on, calling them pros in the past. So
no, that's the thing. Look, here's the problem with that. Organizations insist that they behave like pros, but they don't pay them a salary. They insist they practice for like 8 hours a day. Some people even attempt to write this into their unenforceable bullshit contracts, and they put all this expectation on them. Well, where are the rewards? If you're a professional player, you have to be paid to be professional. That's why you do it. Otherwise, what would be the point? I've literally seen people try and enforce contracts that have no salaries. Good luck with that, by the way.
There's quite a few of them in the UK scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Good luck with that. I'll tell you this, if you're a player and you watch this video, if someone's trying to stop you moving organizations or anything like that based on a contract, which I guarantee you will be just a copy and paste from another contract, from another contract, from another contract that was badly written. I bet it's not even divided up into like behavioral stuff and salary stuff and all. It's unenforceable. It's bullshit. It's nonsense. Do not respect or adhere to that contract whatsoever, because they are not treating you with the respect that would make you want to respect that contract. So that's the first thing. You want people to be professional, treat them like professionals. So it starts with the organization and the managers. And I've seen them. I've seen them with their vlogs that 50 people watch. And I've seen them at events, over a bar, drinking flat lager out of a plastic cup, saying, "Oh, woe is me, woe is me." The players just won't listen to me. Do you pay them, mate? Well, no, I can't afford to. Right. Well, there you go then. Do you know what I mean? Like,
but then there'd be no scene, would there? If this doesn't
but the
happen,
consensus is right. So the concession is you cannot say to people, "Please come in and act professionally." Okay. Well, acting professionally is a sacrifice. I'm sacrificing my time. I am sacrificing my enjoyment. Right. That's the one thing we always say. Think about the argument when, again, pub bores start talking about, footballers are paid how much, and bloody doctors only get shut up, mate. It's not even the same thing, is it, you idiot? What are you even talking about? Since when has entertainment ever been a reflection on the value of society as a whole? It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous argument. Whoever makes the argument is a moron.
Well, until the day NHS gets sponsor logos on.
Yeah, right, exactly. When NHS has its own Premier League and doctors are competing against each other, so you can do the most surgeries and the best types of surgeries and getting points for it, and it's on TV and I can watch it and bet on it and everything else. Until then, mate, shut up. So, right, I hate that argument. But people say, right, like, well, the counter argument to that is, hey, yeah, but think about all the sacrifices you have to make to be a pro. And there are many, in sports. Diet, you can't go out, you can't drink, you can't have fun. This is your youth, right? You're meant to go out and have a little bit of delinquency. Just a little bit.
You don't have a private life.
Yeah, but you don't have one. And you definitely don't have a private life. Not now with social media reach. So I have to be a brand ambassador for your shit brand that doesn't pay me. Right, I've got to not go out and play a game with a team to go to an event and maybe win it again for you, right? And I have to do all of this, right, just because you say so, and you're trying to guilt me into it by saying if you don't do it, then we're not going to build a scene. Bollocks to that. Bollocks to that. You cannot do that. No one in their right mind would ever enter into that agreement. And here's the thing: if you could point to somebody that had done it that way and say, look where they are now, mate. Right? Look what they've done. They did it this way. Yeah. Right? Well, we can't, can we? Because you know what? It doesn't work. It just doesn't work like that. So I feel genuine sympathy for these players. right? They are using organizations in the sense all they want to do is go to the LAN event. All they want to do is compete. And they know there's enough amateur organizations that will basically write a check for 1,500 quid or whatever it is to get them to an iSeries or an Epic LAN or whatever events are going on these days, you know. But you know, that's as far as it goes from them. What the organizations expect in return for that free LAN is just unreasonable. I hate to break it to everyone. They're just being unreasonable and making them sign unenforceable contracts. You're just embarrassing yourself. I see these contracts all the time. They are not enforceable. Tear them up, wipe your ass on them, whatever you have to do. They are not worth the paper they're written on. And players who, do you know how many players come to me and they go, oh, I've had this really good opportunity and I really want to leave this team, but I signed this contract like 9 months ago with some terrible organization who didn't pay me, right? Who I haven't even got the prize money, right? Because the manager took it and they're not letting me leave. They're saying they're going to sue me. It's like, dude, right, seriously, just ignore it. They're
not going to take them to court, are they? Because they don't have any money.
It's not even that. Even if they had all the money in the world, they wouldn't take you to court because they get laughed out of court. A junior paralegal would look at these contracts and go, what is this? What is this?
Oh, it's one of them eSports ones again.
Yeah, we got another eSports contract, guys. That would be the end of it. So players, you know, look, obviously look at what you sign, but the vast majority of UK organizations are just copy-pasting their contracts. They're nonsense. They're unenforceable. When you think about, like, you know, and I did this, I took an LCS contract and had a legal expert break it down for one of my stories that I did back when I was working at the Daily Dot. If there's people speculating that there's unenforceable clauses in those contracts, what do you think? You know, Bigsy and Bagsy down the road who've bought an org for £1 and put it together. What do you think their contracts are like? Garbage, absolute garbage. So, yeah, so that's the point. I don't even know where the original question was.
I can't remember now. It was Rob saying, Rob from eSports UK saying, do you follow UK?
Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Yes, I know about UK eSports. Yeah. And I pick these examples, like I say, because they're not as rare as they should be. When you operate at I've been to Danish events, and there's the odd story. I could tell you some funny ones, right? And again, this is back before eSports really took off. Vast majority of local scenes do not have incidents like this, where the police are getting called, where everyone's, you know, on cocaine, where pro players are getting into fights with each other in the middle of matches, where people are just trying to cheat because they know at a BYOC LAN event, admins can be slack, especially if you've got 60, 70 teams in one hall. You know, this happens in the UK. This is every UK event. Every UK event. So yes, there is a problem there, and yes, I'm very aware of it.
Yeah, I think for me, Richard, a lot of the problems boil down to money at the end of the day and lack of funding. And so we'll talk about that now. Let's move on to how to fix UK sports. I think because we've been talking quite a while, I might split this video into two. So I've had my response to your video. You've reacted back. Let's do it in two parts so that the next part can be how to fix UK esports. So I'm just going to, guys, if you're watching, please watch part 2. I'll put the link in the description when it's done. Okay.